Welcome. This is the School District of Prescott Board of Education regular meeting. I'll call this meeting to order subject Section 1883 Wisconsin statutes. Our first item is to adopt the agenda. Dr. Spikuza, are there any changes?
There are no changes to what's published. I did want to make sure that people understand is that the first copy goes out to the paper and then it's published on our website. No new items were added, but they were changed in the order. And so that has been made, and that is what's posted out in the 3 locations as well as on our website.
All right, we'll need a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll move to adopt the agenda.
Where's Steve?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Next item is Pledge of Allegiance. Vicki, would you care to lead us?
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Next item is recognition of visitors. Is there anybody in the audience that would care to be recognized? Doesn't appear so. All right, we're going to move on to good news.
And our student representative has officially graduated. The school board has, the school council, student council has identified that they will be selecting their student representative in August. And so we have 2 months without a student representative. At this time, we're going to have our administrative team come up. We're going to lead with Sandy Strand, who has 2 items, one with regards to our DPI report on findings with external review and some of our nurse updates with regards to immunization.
Good evening, members of the board. Superintendent Spikuza. I am proud to announce that this year, the state of Wisconsin DPI is starting a new monitoring process with regards to our ESEA funds, and they're separating out title reviews from our regular Elementary and Secondary Education Act funding. And we were fortunate enough to be selected for a targeted monitoring for Title I supports, and what that entailed was a focused review of how we manage our equitable share proportion of Title I dollars. So according to federal law, we are required to set aside a percentage of the money that we get for Title I and Title II, as well as Title IV for the private school in our community, which is St. Joseph's. And I just want to do a shout out to Megan Smith and Yvonne Zarnsdorf. They kind of led the charge. As a matter of fact, I heard after we had our virtual review where they reviewed all the documents that we provided to them from CISA 11 and other CISAs around the state, that DPI was using Prescott as an example of how to execute our equitable share process compliantly and effectively. So very, very good news there. And then also we received notification from the Department of Health and DPI that our immunization compliance at Prescott was at 100%. There were some school districts that were like at 30 and 40% compliant with the population of their students. So of course that includes students who are actually meeting the state laws in terms of immunization requirements, or that we have provided the reasonable documentation for conscientious objection. So shout out to our nursing staff for wrangling and tracking down all of that data and maintaining it so that we're at 100% compliance.
Thank you.
Hi, Sarah Dusick, Malone Elementary. And today I'm just going to give just a really quick update on summer school. We are, as of today, officially half done with our summer, with the main part of our summer school programming. We have a little over 500 students registered, and it's being held up here at the high school, and it's going really well. Students are now completely self-sufficient getting to and from their classes. They have been able to handle the dismissal in the bigger building, and it's gone really, really well. It's taken an army of staff to help make sure that students can get where they go and to get them self-sufficient, but it's been running really well. And then at the elementary building, our 4K programming is down there, and they've been doing a nice job in that location dodging construction as it's been happening on site and making sure that the littles are in safe places as that's going on. So summer school program is going well.
Good evening, members of the board. Kyle Igo, middle school principal. I just wanted to take a moment to thank you guys for allowing the middle school and the 8th grade class to take their trip to DC. This was our first trip that we hope to make an annual trip, and we went June 7th through the 10th, and our 4 days were an amazing, amazing, amazing experience for everyone that was involved. We had almost zero issues. We had one night of a hotel issue, not us, but others. So nothing that we could really control. But our student population that we went, our 8th graders, they made our Prescott School District and our Prescott community extremely proud for what they did, how they behaved. I gave them tons of freedom, and everywhere that we went, we were complimented how we were the best school group, the most well-behaved, the most respectful school group that we had there that day, that week, in a while. Our tour bus, our tour director, our students really did an amazing job of following directions, acting like mature young adults. These students are definitely ready for high school next year. They did great. We put on between 7.5 and 9.5 miles a day of walking. Saw so many different sites. We're able to connect a lot of different dots from their social studies class in 8th grade. It really was a great trip, so I do thank you for approving that trip and for approving next year's trip. Like I said, we're going to try to make that an annual experience, but it was just a great trip. My final piece on that is I got a phone call today from a veteran down in Florida. I can't remember where in Florida, but we stopped and we saw an honor flight at the World War II Memorial on our very last day. I think there were 41 veterans that were on the honor flight. We made some cards. We handed out some cards for them. And this veteran, he was so moved by it, he had to look us up and track us down of who we were. He chatted with 5 different of our kids, 5 different kids of ours, and he just, again, wanted to applaud us for how great and respectful and honoring that our students were of the honor flight that came through. So again, thank you for that opportunity, and congratulations to those students that went with us. Made it a great trip.
Thank you, Mr. Igo. Today is the first day official of summer, and we exited with students on June 1st. It has been 14 business days, and you've seen probably externally a big transformation that's going on, and later tonight we'll be sharing some additional interior pictures of the referendum dollars at work. Mike Koika and his team has done an outstanding job. We've already flipped the middle school and elementary libraries to their new homes. I want to thank Joan Simon, Erica Kieser, and some of the other staff that helped. All of our teachers who packed up and assisted, following Mike's directions, and the administrative team has been outstanding. And then our administrative team conducted its 2-day retreat on the 5th and 6th. That is what we usually kind of continue to organize our work around to come back to you with some goals in August. So we're looking forward to that. And then I just want to give a shout out to the photos that are sharing kind of the last term of the school year, from athletics to graduations to trips and field trips. It was outstanding. I want to thank our administrative team. The graduations from kindergarten, 5th grade, and the high school were probably the best unifying thematic graduations, end of year celebrations. And I just wanted to thank the administrative team for the work that they did in celebrating both our students, our staff, and families.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to school business. First item is the consent agenda. In consent, we have the board minutes from the May 17th, 2023 meeting, board checks and finance, non-licensed personnel retirement, resignation, employment, and change of non-licensed staff, We have Alice training drills from all 4 schools, board policies, technical changes for 32.1 updates from Neola, approving a milk contract with Kemp's for the 2023-24 school year, and the nursing annual report. Is there anything that the board would like to pull out of consent? If not, I will adopt the consent agenda. Are there any objections? All right, the consent is adopted. Thank you. We'll move on to item B, consider retirement, resignation, and new hires of licensed staff. No retirements, Rick, so
Correct.
second is resignations.
At this time of year, we have some resignations that have come in, and Michelle Warugula, who is a middle school administrative assistant, has tendered her resignation. Oh, I'm sorry. Those were in consent. Though we have 3 teachers. Melissa Johnson from Malone Elementary, Tanya Moravik for 7th grade special education, and Joy Schreiber from the high school special education.
Any comments or questions on any of these from the board? If not, we can take a motion.
I move to approve all resignations.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? That carries. And then new hires, Rick?
Yeah, just, again, our administrative team and Chantel Byram, who is HR, we've been able to hire 3 positions. Cameron Myers, who is a high school science, Grace Weiss for 2nd grade, and Christopher Duswecki. You may notice that the last name is similar to another teacher that's here, so what a great recruiting tool we had.
Any questions on any of these comments? Otherwise, we can entertain a motion.
I move to approve all new hires.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? And that one carries. Thank you. We'll move on to item C. Consider contract with Teamworks for facilitating Vision 2035.
Yeah, and why we have our 2 guests that are going to come up to present. We have Christine Roboleski and Julie Babe from Teamworks. As you know, Vision 2035 is something we've been talking for over 3 to 4 months. We've identified 2 very specific core areas that as an administrative team and school board we'd like to pursue and ensure that we have stakeholder voice. And specifically, Michael Kozmowski, Mike Hoika, and our administrative team have been working with our PLC teacher leads on ensuring that our physical environment and the learning environment and our academic model align. In addition, we have strong interest in ensuring that our extracurricular activities that use indoor facilities and outdoor facilities are the best and aligned to the way the programs currently are being presented, but also to provide opportunities for the future. We've completed with the referendum, are engaged in a 2-year process of updating and finalizing the last vision, that strategic vision that ended or began its work in 2014. So we believe that it's time now to have a voice that would include our staff and our students who are engaged in the learning process and to get their voices forward, and then to include and have reaction by our families and obviously then the community. I did share an article with all of you from the Catalyst for Educational Change, and it talks about how school systems touch everybody's lives, whether or not they have somebody associated with the schools, but also all the way to the tax base. So with that, we understand that it's important to lead and have facilitated groups with experts in the field. And we have a partnership with Teamworks, who knows the Prescott Public Schools, knows our staff, and knows our community. And so with that, we've asked them to come forward and share with you how they would kind of execute an opportunity to gather the information over the year and to provide actionable steps and reports. We did have a conference call. Mike Matzik and Tanya Hollab joined me to be able to talk with Julie and Christine, and so from that we have a refined presentation for you. And give me a second and I'll bring it up for you.
And while you're doing that, I can just give a little bit of background on TeamWorks. For those of you who don't know us, we've been supporting school districts and education-focused organizations for almost 30 years now. And much like school districts have had to change and adapt over especially the last 5 to 10 years, we have adapted with our clients and with many school districts. We pride ourselves on our processes, our planning, and the systems that we put in place to help school districts in particular be able to have adults work effectively together on behalf of students and to include interested parties in the input of the decisions that are going to affect them. So I have been with TeamWorks for about 11 years now. Some of that time I've had the privilege of working with Prescott and other school districts. We work with districts small, large, medium-sized, rural, urban, suburban, and a lot of our work is about pollinating. So the project that we're proposing to do with you tonight, we've done similarly with other districts, but not the same. Everything is adapted toward each district's specific needs, including the schedule and the specific population that we're going to be working with and what you really want out of the project. I mentioned that we've been changing and growing at TeamWorks. We have added consultants, a lot of consultants actually, over the last, I would say, 2 to 3 years. One of them is with me tonight, Julie Babe. She's been with us almost a year. I'm going to let her talk about her experience, but part of what we've been trying to do is really expand our expertise, expand our facilitation base, so that we can really connect with all of those different interested parties in ways that make the most sense to the system and the people who are closest to learning and teaching. So, Julie.
Yeah. I, like Christine said, joined TeamWorks about a year ago, and prior to that I was in a metro Minneapolis area school district where I worked for about 9 years and supported a few different initiatives, but a couple that I feel are relevant and really got me excited when I learned about this opportunity through Christine. I have a background in architecture, so that was prior to coming to my foray into education, and I supported an initiative where I facilitated cohorts of teachers to help them really assess and think about how they can create learning environments that really match up with the learning experiences they want their students to have. And it was through that work that I was able to help not only coach the teachers and help them think about the learning environments as far as what they want, but also to work with students. And there was a lot of facilitation work that was born out of that, not only with the learning environments, but also with the crowdsourced innovation program that our district had. So I really got a lot of experience with facilitation, and eventually that innovation work led me to TeamWorks. And like I said, I'm really passionate about the learning environment, how it impacts students, and so this is why this project really speaks to me.
So we're going to give you some highlights, probably not every single detail, but when we started the conversation with you all, it was actually originally around kind of 3 areas that have now been condensed into 2. As Dr. Spikuza mentioned, we know that you had your strategic plan in place. We helped with that process early on. And now that you have reached this point of we're wrapping up our accomplishments from that strategic plan, even though it's a little delayed like many districts, thanks to that pandemic that we all experienced, we are now focusing on these 2 main areas. You have a lot that you've accomplished in terms of your academic model and articulating what that is, doing some professional development in your district to help teachers really understand what we want our students to learn and how we want our teachers to teach. Now we want to have a conversation with them around what is the physical learning environment that supports the best kind of learning and teaching environment in your district as possible. So we are proposing that we, one, check in with your interested parties first on how is that experience going? What do you want it to be now, given that you have this new academic model that you've been implementing? And then what is the learning environment, that physical learning environment, what does that look like, feel like, sound like for you? And so we are proposing kind of 2 parts in the fall and spring to be able to check in with your students, with your staff in particular. And along the way, we will be seeking feedback from parents and some of your community partners, particularly in the spring, once we get some of those ideas. So we're going to start with your main purpose, your mission, which is around that learning environment. And then we'll ask some of those same kinds of questions about the extracurricular and green space environments as well. So again, starting with those learning environments, physical learning environments, moving on to the extracurricular and green spaces a little bit later once we get a good sense of that. You mentioned that you have the move happening between your 4th and 5th grade and your middle school. That's another reason why we wanted to have kind of 2 check-ins with your students and your staff, because we know they're going to just be learning about these new learning physical environments. And so we want to get a check with them on what they think it could be like, but also once they have a chance to be in the school for a while, talk about the possibilities for that space. So, some of you are familiar with our decision-making framework. We are proposing an adapted version of this. So we are not, the way that this process works is we articulate who the choice makers are. In this case, it's the superintendent and the school board. And then we develop usually a set of options or a couple of designs for the choice makers to consider. Rather than having a full-on design team, because we know there are some capacity issues and time issues involved with that, is we're going to have the administrative team kind of be your options team, the filter or flow-through for all the ideas that come from students and staff, and then the feedback that we receive from families and community. But we are going to really emphasize that stakeholder voice, both on input and feedback. So we are going to start with students and staff giving us input on those desired experiences and those ideas. And then we're also going to get feedback from families and from community partners on those ideas and on some of the experiences, particularly parents, that they would like their students to have. We are starting with students and staff because they are the ones who are closest to it. They're experiencing what's happening now. I mean, we all have our ideas of what school was like when we were much younger, but that things have changed quite a bit, as we all know, and those learning experiences have changed. So we will have this interaction between the stakeholders through the administrative team and then to the board with what are those ideas, and also having that opportunity to check against resources, to check against any constraints that you may have in the district, and then go back out to stakeholders for that feedback. Implementation and refinement would occur after you make a decision once we've gotten through this year of engagement.
So as far as the planning steps involved, the first thing we would do is work with you guys on designing a guiding change document. That's to set the parameters of the project. That might be brought to the board table for approval, and it just sets the parameters for the project as far as what we want as far as desired outcomes. The schedule is really tailored to your district's needs, what's optimal and what's ideal. As Christine mentioned, we'd have a fall round of engagement and a spring round. We talked about on Monday a little bit that August could be an ideal kickoff time as teachers are preparing their spaces for students, that this engagement process could help teachers actually be reflective about the learning environment and what they want for students. And there could be some short-term gains or things that they could, start enacting right away in these engagement sessions to help them just reflect and think about that. And then we would work with you to determine an ideal window for surveys and what will be optimal as far as getting responses. Another part of the process is identifying the students and staff that would be consulted for input. And we'd want to seek representative groups to really make sure we capture a good cross-section of all of your staff and students. And then we just recommend that we give some notice, to teachers and to your staff and students. So 2 to 3 weeks notice to get those invitations and plan for those engagement sessions.
I do, but I can wait, yeah.
Okay.
He was asking if I have any questions, but I'll hold off.
Okay. We'll go through the presentation.
Yeah.
Okay. So the order and the timing of engagement, we've already discussed a little bit. It's a little hard to see on the left there, but we're doing it in terms of students and staff really around the same time, but students first, staff, families, and then community. Again, from who's closest to that learning and teaching environment. As Julie just mentioned, we're proposing 2 rounds. It does say grades 4 through 6. We're actually suggesting we could go down as low as grades 4. We've worked with students in kindergarten and first grade in terms of input and engagement as well, so we're familiar with getting that kind of input from students. And these are connected to your different strategic directions as well, so those are tied closely. So as I mentioned, we would like to have some, not just questions like a focus group, but really engage with students and staff around what's working, what's not working. What are their ideas? How do they see the space working for them and some of the ideas that they have for it? Same thing with the staff and the teachers. What are the needs? What are the wants for the spaces given what they've been learning? And then from there, once we have some of those ideas, we filtered it through the administrative team. You've had updates along the way as a school board, is we would go to parents and families and say, here are some of the ideas that we've heard from students and staff. What is your response? What is your feedback on these? What ideas do you have? That becomes part of the data. And then eventually we propose working with community partners. Those, again, who have some connection with the school district and understand what the district and the schools have been doing, and having something similar. Here are the ideas, what's your response to them, so that you're really raising awareness about it, but getting that feedback multiple times. And as Julie was mentioning, we would have a couple of rounds of surveys around those ideas once we've shaped them with the administrative team. And so that's the order and the timing of the engagement that we're proposing. Julie's going to talk a little bit about the experience that we're hoping for them to have.
You know, I saw this and I just love this. I mean, when I saw these words, and this is like the architect in me, but when I think about what does a space for experimentation look like, and what is an entrepreneurial space, and what is a dynamic space, I love that you have this academic model and that you're talking about it in these ways of how it looks and what it sounds like and feels like, and that the physical environment is a critical piece. On the next slide, I have an image of these 3 big influences on students. There's a great book written by Canon Design called The Third Teacher, and it talks about the 3 major influences on a student in a learning environment are the teachers and adults in the space, their peers, but the physical environment too. It's a huge component of what happens in a learning environment. And an example I like to give is, you know, you go into a big open gym with a group of kindergartners, what are they going to do? I mean, 9 times out of 10.
Run around.
Yeah, they're going to run. It is asking you to start running. I mean, right? There's other spaces, and I saw your list, and like, well, what does a space that's entrepreneurial look like? That sounds pretty cool. And it's probably a little bit different than a space for, you know, critical thinking or for questioning, right? So the way that, the things that you want your students to experience, the space can be a player in that, right? And knowing what your students are experiencing right now and knowing what your teachers are experiencing right now, as far as that third player, as far as the space, to hear from them, to know what they need, to be able to engage and hear about their personal experiences and what they want it to be like, it's really powerful in completing this academic model that you guys have laid out.
Okay, so one of the questions that Tanya and Mike asked us when we had the opportunity to talk with them is kind of what does this look like when we're done? What comes to our table? And one of the things we don't want to do, honestly, is to predict exactly what these ideas are going to be and look like, right? So we're not coming up with an overall brand new design, but we are gathering from the students, the staff, the families, and your community, what are the needs, the wants, the preferences that they have for the space. And so what you might see are some potential recommendations or options based on those 2 big questions that we were asking at the beginning. It could be a tiering of needs and preferences and ideas, right? Where these are the things we absolutely need to have, these are the things that would be nice to have, these are the things that, maybe someday we can get them. We see it in other places. I expect we're going to see a list of features and characteristics that are really not just desired, but needed to really complement that academic model that you have. So we see some combination of that with coming forward to you in reports, in ideas, but making sure, again, it matches with what your district is already doing and preparing. We also see that we may, as Julie mentioned, there might be some information that flows out of these sessions. Julie's already seen it happen. We've seen it happen where, based on the dialogue we have, especially with staff, is they may already come out of that saying, I can make some adjustments in my space right now that can lead in that direction. So you might see some short-term outcomes, some medium-term outcomes, and some long-term options that could come out of this process even as we're doing it, but definitely by the time that we're done. So I don't want to show you exactly what it's going to look like because we don't want to tell you this is what it has to be. We want it to come out from this process. And I think that's the main gist of it. You have the proposal, and I know Mike at least has some questions for us.
Yeah, I'll go around. And Tanya, I'm going to have you kind of go first. So you had a chance to kind of digest from the Monday meeting. So do you have any questions here? Or?
I have some and some that I had kind of asked, and so I'll re-ask and stuff. But first of all, I want to talk a little bit kind of about the sequence, and we talked about this. Oftentimes we first have things on info and discussion, and then we make decisions. And my understanding, and I just want to kind of talk about this as a board, my understanding is one of the purposes of doing this in this order was because we have a time frame of wanting to kind of use this as a way of engaging when staff get back in the buildings, when kids get back. There's a little bit of a staff development component that can go with it, with setting up classrooms and stuff like that. And if we wait another month, that's our next opportunity. That window gets pretty tight with your guys' planning because TeamWorks isn't expected to start planning before we agree that we're going to move forward and stuff. So that is part of why it's out of sequence a little bit of what we would normally do. The other piece I wanted to bring up is that we tried to have a work session. I think at our last board meeting, we wanted to have a work session where we would go into this stuff pretty deep. Probably the phone conversation items that we talked about would have been part of that work session. And we probably tossed around 10, 15 dates, and it just never really worked out for us to have at least the majority of the board there as well as teamwork. So this is kind of a different order, but there is some purpose and reason and why we're doing that. And then I wanted to bring up that this really is in response, this long-term planning, and I know the district has kind of coined the 2035 year, but that's really in response to the community survey that went out, and I think, Rick, you reminded me that was 5 years ago at this point, which is really amazing to me. That time has it's just gone so fast. But 5 years ago, and the community said, let's do what we need to do right now, which is a referendum and the work that's happening right now. And then the next step is we really do need to start talking about long-term facility planning. That is probably the most feedback we get from the district when we talk about things like referendum and building planning and what are we going to do with moving spaces, is what is our vision down the road. So that's why we're at this table right now and having these conversations. And I just wanted to ask a few questions kind of through it. And I think they're just kind of the basic questions that we have to talk about as a board. One is where's this cost coming from? And so my understanding was there was an initial proposal. We thought that was out of budget. And then there was a scaled down proposal, which I looked at. And this is even scaled down about another $5,000 to $10,000 from that proposal. And I know that Rick had worked with your team to kind of even redefine what we need more. And there's some opportunities that we might add some stuff on at the end, like a work session or something like that. So I do appreciate that flexibility with working, especially with a smaller school district. Funding is a lot different than your Minnetonka experience, for example, or Stillwater experience. So, but one of the questions was, where is the funding coming from? Fund balance being one option. I looked at our policy, and our policy requires us to have, well, not requires us, but our goal is to have about 20%, I believe, of our budget in our fund balance. And I think we're there or really close to that. Rick, do you know offhand what percentage we're at?
Yeah, we entered the year with 6.5 million. This is the time of year end, so we don't have the final where we are. So I don't want to guess. We are having our audit at the end of July. At this point, I would say that the primary place, because this is a one-time event, and it's something that would be covering the next 10 to 12 years, this is the most appropriate likely place to take it would be from the fund balance. It gives you the opportunity, because it doesn't necessarily have to be replenished, right? Where if you put it into something that's an ongoing cost, then where does the money come from? And so with regards to, you also mentioned a little bit about that we have an addendum that if there was a work session or additional feedback or consulting with the board, that would have to be approved, right, to come forward. As Sue and I are currently building the fiscal year for 2024, typically there are professional services within the district budget that we allocate. And there's professional services for the school board, for administration. So if it's possible, and again, we don't know how we're going to be able to balance the budget yet, but if we can, we would put some additional dollars into professional services if you want to draw upon that.
And I was trying to think back of when the last time we've withdrawn money from the fund balance. I really couldn't even think of a time. So it's really rare that we do this. I don't know if you can think of anything offhand.
We just, earlier in the spring, once we made the decision to do this middle school to elementary switch, the board gave us additional dollars to cover some additional costs that went beyond the referendum.
Okay. So it's pretty rare that we take money out of this, and when I think of, and I looked at our policy to make sure this falls under kind of all of the parameters that's set there, and this really does, for me, make sense that it comes from the fund balance. It's one time. We're talking, this is a 10-year down the road plan, if not. This is a really good purpose, I think, of using that funds. The cost, and I don't know if it was up there, but it was right around $30,000, a little under, I think, was the overall cost. And I also had asked Rick if, like, does our district have the capacity to do this within? And you didn't say no, because you're great like that, but I could feel like this would be quite a strainer on our groups. And I also think it's really important, and there's some added value to having outside facilitated conversations. So students having conversations with not their principal or their superintendent, that changes the dynamic of that conversation as all the way down to that community level. So I do like that kind of third party, if you will, stakeholder conversations and stuff. So, and then the other thing I wanted just to comment on, and not really a question, was just that outcome piece. And it sounds like it's projected right about this time in a year where we'll be able to come back together. At our last board meeting, I believe we set that yeah, a year from now, that would be a good goal time for us to really start zoning in on our next step. So that fits really well in our time frame as well. And to me, that almost is like the second round of beginning conversations. And I just wanted to make sure that I'm kind of aligning thought, which is that, you know, you're gathering voice and stakeholder input. And this is really what I like that slide too with the puzzle pieces. Feels like, looks like. And then some of that's like, okay, administration, management, then school board. What are we going to do with this information? And is that kind of the outcome projection you guys were thinking?
Yeah, so we will end up with a final report, but we may find, you know, along the way after that first round that there are some great ideas that you may want to start pursuing. Again, we don't want to predict for you and dictate what needs to happen other than the facilitation and this experience that we want to be able to have. But we do want you to be updated, and we want to make sure that in the end, you have, you know, some really solid ideas and those characteristics that are desired. And then, of course, that implementation stage is how you take it and run with it.
And I think my last question, and I can't remember if I saw it on these slides, but when I looked at the proposal that was sent to us a little bit deeper. It looked like most of these conversations were going to be face-to-face or in-person conversations. I heard you bring up surveys a little bit, and was that a little bit more geared towards community versus students and teachers?
So the conversations with students, staff, families, and community are going to be in person. They are facilitated conversations, ideally with both of us, because then we can have a bigger group, and that's how we were able to get the proposal down a little bit by saying, okay, we're both going to be there, we'll have all the students together, we'll manage in the group setting. In terms of the surveys, that's really around feedback. So the conversations with students, staff, families, and community are a sampling of people, not all of them. The surveys are designed to say, okay, let's broaden it. It's a volunteer survey, not a random sample survey. For other people who want to provide feedback and share their ideas, that's why we do the surveys.
Perfect. Thank you. Those were all my initial questions.
Okay. Helen, do you have any?
She asked all my questions. She's good at reading my paper. Okay, so I guess the other thing that we kind of, like, I understand that kind of piggybacking, like, we can't do this in-house. This is too much to put on our admin, but reading through the proposal and reading and kind of going through everything that was sent, when I'm reading it, it looks like it kind of is. I just want a clarification that the entire admin team is going to be there, but not facilitate it. So they're going to be there as a stakeholder, but they don't have to, like, they're not going to have to take the data and create something with that too, because then that would kind of defeat the purpose of, like.
Right, so
Yeah.
the administrative, once we will be interacting with your students and your staff and your families and community. There may be some administrators in the room. Frankly, in many cases, we ask them not to be there when we're working with staff in particular, so that they can just speak their minds. And then from that, we will work with the administrative team on those ideas and outcomes and say, now, what does this mean in terms of the larger district perspective? How do we make this into a workable potential plan for the board and for the district? How does it fit? What would need to change? What's doable, what's not? And again, based on the guiding change parameters as well.
Okay, so more of a cooperative between you and the administration to figure out how to take that information and what to do with it.
Right.
Okay.
Like what this could mean.
Yeah.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah, and I mean, it's
Okay.
not gonna.
The possibilities.
The possibilities, right.
Okay.
But I mean, I was explaining on Monday, it's not gonna be like, you are going to order these desks and these
Yeah.
chairs. It's not like that.
Okay.
It's what the bigger picture of what teachers need to be able to meet that academic model that you have, big picture, and then being able to have a conversation with admin to talk about what that could mean, big picture for your
Okay.
district.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the same type of input then that you're looking for from the community, however we're going to select community members, I guess, however we're going to go about doing that, but that group of people, same with that group of parents, is going to be the same type of input you're looking for? Like,
So we're talking about groups, plural
Yep.
of parents, and groups, plural of community members, and we're looking for some sampling. So with parents, it would be by invitation. Again, trying to, as much as possible, get that representation. So elementary, middle, high school families, we would invite, the families of students with special education needs, families of students that are gifted. So you want to have that range as much as possible, but it's by invitation, so
Okay.
it's volunteer.
okay,
And in terms of the families and community, a big component is going to be getting their feedback on the ideas from students and staff. And then the second question is, and what other ideas do you have, right? Because they are not living in those classrooms in your schools. They are in some of your fields because you are a community that shares a lot of these locations. But in terms of the families and community in particular, it's getting feedback and then their ideas, rather
Okay.
than asking them to, out of the blue, say, what do you think our students and staff need in the classroom, when they aren't
right,
living it every day.
yep, okay.
Vicki, I had asked a question similar to that, and I think that's really an important distinction. We have highly qualified professionals within our buildings, like some of the staff that I trust more, amazing staff, leaders. And these are people that study things like environment, study what kids need to learn, study. And so I think that's a really important distinction, that those are some of the people that we're asking first, and kids that are in that experience. And then when we go to the community, it's not like, okay, when you were in school 30 years ago, what do they need? It's like, hey, we have hired professionals that, what do you think about this? Are we missing anything? And I think that's a really important distinction of using our professional voices and training within this district that we have.
Okay. I guess my last question is how, we talk about community engagement, and looking at the proposal, it looks like there's 4 times in the one component that might happen. What do you do if the community doesn't come? Like, how do you get them excited to be there, and kind of that, and is that a partnership between admin and Dr. Spikuza as well, to get them excited and to get them in the door?
So from my experience, just kind of having the free-for-all invitation doesn't work. So it's best to partner with community organizations, community partners that already have some connection. And so, yes, we propose working with your administrative team to say, who are some of those critical partners that maybe can co-host a community event. And I have done this successfully in other districts. Sometimes it's been with churches, sometimes with community organizations, sometimes with, businesses or the Kiwanis or whoever it is that's really close and has a connection with a district and has some trust with either their community, if it's a neighborhood organization, or the broader community. So that's why we're saying not just open it up and have an open forum, for example. We're saying find those partners who can co-host and help get the invitations and identify the people that need to be there.
I think that personal touch is key, to have people.
Okay, yeah, that was.
And just to also be mindful of your audience and what they need and the time, and, parents with young children, and, well, then are we offering maybe dinner? Or, be creative about making it appealing to come at that time,
Okay.
You guys ask really good questions, by the way. So I'm going to try to keep my questions a little different. I got 2 things. The first one was around the process around the community engagement. So we have all this. We're getting all this data from students and teachers and faculty and the admin. Do you take that information then and just kind of compile it up, and what do you use to facilitate conversations with the community? I mean, you have to come at them with something, right? Are you taking that information and sharing it with them, or how is that working?
Well, it can look different in different ways. There was a recent community engagement series that I facilitated with GFW, Gibbon, Fairfax, Winthrop. They're about an hour southwest of the Twin Cities metro area, and they were going out for a bond referendum in April. We did a series of community engagement sessions where we actually, in order to, because they wanted to build a new centralized K through 12 school and hear from the community about what they would like to have. So we did have boards of images to show them like what could be. But then there were value statements that they voted on to say, this is what I really value when it comes to a K through 12 community school. And so they were able to respond to some things. So I would envision that we would also have some things for them to respond to that came from the students and staff, but then to hear what did they value, or what means, what's meaningful to them as far as a family member or community member. And these changes that, students and teachers are seeking as far as what happens in their learning environments.
Okay.
So, something to respond to.
I want to be really clear, because this part of the community engagement is really about getting feedback, soliciting feedback. It's not like an advisory committee that is taking information and trying to make some proposals for us, right? So at this point in the game, at some point that might be a goal of ours is to once we get to that point. But for this particular phase, we're talking about just getting feedback from the community
on what we've already gathered from students and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the last question I had was around, and I don't want to bring this up, but it's the timing of it, right? We need, we're all eager to get into this, but I have to bring this up. I'm going to frame it up in a different way. We have a move going on right now where all these grades are moving around, right? So they all used to be in these other buildings, and they were all very familiar with the other buildings. Now we're swapping out, I don't know how many grades, 5? How are we going to make sure the feedback that we get is going to be valuable when it's their brand, they're getting into an environment that they're not familiar with. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Sure, I can start and maybe Julie can add to it. So one thing is, I think students are less confined in their thinking, in their creativity, and their ideas, perhaps than some of us as adults are. And so even though those students, they've had experience, right, in whichever facility they've been in, and we can give them the ideas and ask them what is it that they would like to see in their experience moving forward in the future. I agree with you that that's why we're doing the two kind of connections with students, because they're going to be in a new space, but they've been in learning spaces already. They have a sense of what works and what doesn't, what they'd like to see. And, the experiences around, yes, I like working in groups. So what works for you? If you were working in groups, what can that look like, feel like, sound like, just like we were saying before? Do you need tables? What's the seating you need? I can tell you we've done student experience projects, nothing to do with facilities, and kids are telling us about what they need related to facilities and their learning experience, so that what they identify comes out, whether they're in a move or not, because they can articulate it, and I'm sure your staff can too. So we're aware of that.
Yeah. I think it's actually great timing to catch them in the fall, to be reflective of their past year, where they were, right? Or what experiences they can, talk to. And then be able to check in with them in the spring about what experience they've had in this past school year, to contrast with what we discussed in the fall. I think that, especially with every student experience is different from year to year, moving through first, second, third, fourth, So we're going to be talking about their experience as a student in general, not just like in this space right now, this room, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Any other questions for these two ladies?
I guess the only other question I had was about the proposals, and there's a cost difference between the two proposals. Does that difference in the cost basically just come down to time, shortening up some of the hours or reducing some of the hours okay.
And specifically, we were advised that having your teachers meet for 3 hours is not a good idea. So we just said we can do what we need to do in 2 hours. So that saved from the first round of proposals to the second round of proposals. And we gave you an option A and B, understanding that, resources are tight, not just in your district, but other districts. So we wanted to give you a couple of options. So when Dr. Spikuza said we're not going past 2 hours with teachers, we said, okay, that'll make the proposal tighter.
It's more so we're not losing like the number of times that you're meeting with everybody. We're just shrinking down that total time. Okay.
And then we saved from kind of option A to B. It's again by, instead of having multiple hits with different grades of students, we're bringing them all in one, and we're just, the two of us are going to facilitate those groups by being able to have smaller subsets of students working together.
Okay.
And the times of the meetings, are they during the school days? Are we asking teachers and admin to stay after school? Or do we know the answer to that yet?
I think what I would say is, if approved and we can use some of the August and PD days, the fall ones are challenging because we pack those already. I would say that would be something that we would be in kind of collaboration both with our students. Obviously is probably going to be something that'll be different than staff, but we need the flexibility. And so I think what the proposal is we will try to be as flexible as we can, because we know our teachers also coach and wear multiple hats. So just because you offer something at the end of the day may not necessarily work. But we have a unique schedule within our district. And so Mondays are an option, professional development, and then the way that we're coming back in August, the last 2 weeks in August with the ramp up, those are some opportunities that we've already identified. And Michael and the admin team have done a really nice job in preparing the teachers for the move, that our teachers are really ready for this conversation. So I do believe that a lot of details, but I think we'll work it out to maximize participation.
Do we need to talk any more about using the fund balance as a board for this? Or I know we're looking at a motion here, but I'm comfortable with using the fund balance. I don't want to take it out of it, you know. I don't know where else, like the general balance, it doesn't seem like that's a great place to take it from, especially just thinking about where we're at with funding from the state and stuff down the road.
Right.
But anybody have concerns with that? Or other ideas of where to take it out of?
First of all, that's the proposal, right, Rick, is to pull it from the fund balance.
That's correct.
Is there an option, you know, we could potentially replenish that at the end of the year if we have leftover dollars, or we could do something else with it?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's a proposal. Anybody have any thoughts on that? There's no really other way to do it. We're not going to be able to squeeze out any money anywhere else.
Well, yeah, and I think the amount is doable.
Yeah.
It seems.
Yeah.
For what we're getting and
Yeah.
as much as we're getting out of it, yeah, I think.
I did want to share, I did talk to Pat. I know he's not here tonight, but I did want to get his thoughts on it, and he gave me permission to give his 2 cents, and he was comfortable with it and pulling it from the fund balance as well. He thinks this is something that needs to get started yesterday, so he's on board with it.
Are we ready for a motion?
Yeah, I think so. Unless there's other dialogue, does anybody else have any questions or comments?
All right. Then, I guess, as you know, the proposal, you have it, it has been refined. There are 2 options. My recommendation, based on kind of where the governor has signed some of the legislation with regards to funding, I think it is in our best interest to be conservative on the cost estimate. As you learned, the difference between option A and option B is really about the amount of time, but all of the tools about facilitation, report writing, surveys are inclusive in both. So my recommendation at this time would be to go with option B. The engagement estimate, again, would be capped at $29,050. There is an addendum that if Sue and I can continue to build that, we would put that, assign some dollars into the current budget, but that really doesn't get refined or resolved until October, as you well know. So what we'd be looking at is approval for steps A through E of option B at $29,050 that would be coming from the fund balance.
Yeah, so I'm looking at the motion as it's written. It doesn't say anything about option B.
Well, I want you to be able to.
Yep.
Yep.
So if we make a motion, I think we got to make sure to get that in there. So anybody want to take a crack at it?
I can. I move to approve option B with Teamworks International to facilitate the Vision 2035 stakeholder meetings using the 4 core identified groups and timelines.
Does that work? All right. Does everybody see it?
Yep.
So there's a motion.
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Let's just roll call. Tanya?
Yay?
Yay, yeah. Vicky?
Aye.
Helen?
Aye.
I'm an aye as well. Motion carries. Thank you very much, and thank you for coming down. Great presentation. We look forward to starting the process and working with you guys, so
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Well done, board.
You're welcome to stay, but
Yeah,
I
you
hear
sure
it
don't wanna
is,
stay?
it is the first night of summer, so feel free to enjoy.
You want to talk about bus garage paving?
Before I I'm going to have Mike Koika come up. I did want to make sure that you understood some of this is kind of why it's in front of you. And that is that with all of the bid processing, Mike Koika and I sat through the spring, is that we just learned recently, right, who was going to win the bids for the Malone Intermediate School and Malone Elementary. In the next couple of weeks, they'll start doing the milling at both of those sites and then paving at the end of the second to third week of July is what the timeline was. Once we had identified the vendor, we know that a lot of machinery and costs are saved by having the vendor having all the large equipment and also just the scope of purchasing power. You know that the bus garage currently is not paved. It is something that has been a concern that Mike Hoyka and I and Tim, thank you for being here, have raised as something for us to try to resolve. Some of the challenges that we have is around safety. During the winter, it is impossible to plow that bus garage parking lot to get down to a level that doesn't either have snow, ice, or pooling of water. In addition, it is very chalky. And as you know, technology, most cars, as you drive today, they're driving computers. And Tim was showing me some of the instruments and the sensors that he and Aaron have to make sure that they continue to clean out on a regular basis because it throws codes. And when it throws a code, we can't put them on the road. So it is something that has been on our target. The planets align with regards to if there was a chance that the cost would come in, that was something that was manageable, we thought this would be a time to try to strike. As you know, we have been managing many different contracts and many different proposals the last 21 days. It is a number that is coming in at $314,771. I'm going to have Mike kind of go through that. What and how the proposal came forward, what it would provide us, and then what options the board would like us to consider, or what questions you have. So Mike, with that, I'll turn it over to you.
All right. So, like I said earlier, some of the reasons we want to bring this forward now is the option that we have excavators and pavers on site, going to do some of our other large parking lots. So there is a savings there not to have them to remobilize and come back out, at a later date. That's $4,000 just for that fee. If you do it a year or two down the road, you can add another 5% for inflation, $16,000 a year for that. So another thing with having a hard surface for the gross parking lot, one is we can facilitate and improve the snow removal and ice removal. Right now, we've been getting a lot more wet, slushy, wet, heavy snows, which the gravel parking lot, you cannot plow them clear and bare like you can a hard surface. So we end up having a lot of slush build up on the gravel base, pushing the gravel base off. Another thing, we use a lot more salt per square footage on that area. And if you would drive by the gravel base up there, you'll see that there's like a white residue left from all the salt deposits on the gravel parking lot yet. Having a parking lot that we can properly plow and get the ice melted off would be a safer parking lot for our buses, our drivers, any other staff that have to go up there and get a vehicle. It would also help by having it graded properly is reduce stormwater from running down the street and into the stormwater system. We could control that water runoff onto our property and run it into a basin and filter it, As you know, keeping buses clean, a cleaner bus uses less fuel. Plus, they mentioned about the building maintenance, or bus maintenance on the sensors on that. But also create a cleaner work environment for the transportation staff that have to work on the buses without dust blowing in there constantly. And also keep the interiors of the buses and cars cleaner. Reduce labor costs, pretty much eliminate the labor costs if we didn't have to keep dragging the gravel back out of the yard that gets plowed in. Reduce purchasing of gravel annually and grading. This also would be a very long-term, like a generational type repair, a long-term repair. We're looking at something, regular maintenance, you're probably looking at a 30, 35-year life cycle on this. And right now, with working with Market and Johnson, and we're going to possibly be doing some other stormwater work for as we know, we're upgrading our other parking lots. We can incorporate that stormwater into those retention ponds, which those are our referendum project, but we kind of share that there. As you can see in the cost, the total cost is, $314,000, almost $315,000. And you got the breakdown as the excavating. And the paving cost is in line square footage for what paving is at our other parking lots that we're doing, which is about $2.46 a square foot. So where the increased cost in this is compared to the other parking lots already have a good base. We're milling that asphalt, using that for a base that's already there. So that's some cost savings in those parking lots for being done. This parking lot, we did some boring. We only have 5 to 7 inch base of gravel, which you need a minimum of 8 to 10. And plus you need a 12-inch base of breaker to go on it. And that's to support the buses. And, it's basically road grade parking lot. So that's where a lot of the excavating cost comes in. We have to remove the 5 to 7 inches of gravel there. And you got to remember, we're going to add 4 inches of asphalt. So now you have to take that out, plus that 4 inches. Plus we have to take a minimum of 12 inches of clay out to get the breaker in. So, and that's where it gets so expensive is moving the earth. And then a popular product that's going into parking lots is geotextile fabric. And what that fabric does is you put that down once you get down to the elevation you want. You put that fabric down, and that helps when you put your granule base in, that it doesn't keep pushing back into the ground. So it's going to make the parking lot last longer. So, and that's an added cost in there too. So that's kind of a spendy parking lot, if you will, but it's the right type of parking lot. So I guess if you have any questions.
Vicki, do you have any questions for Mike on the proposal here? Or?
No, we've got the numbers on everything in front of us. I mean, I don't know that there's questions about any of the numbers or anything along those lines.
Anybody got any questions for Mike? Do you have questions about the project?
I mean, I have overall questions. Is that an okay time to
Sure.
talk? Okay.
Yeah.
I totally trust that this is the money, like how much it costs. I think I had last heard it was predicted to be around $250,000, so it's another $100,000 more. And
yes, and that is, we were hoping for those numbers.
Yeah.
But when we did the bore sampling, we found out we did not have the gravel base that we were hoping for, and kind of also hoping there's more rock under there instead of clay.
yeah,
So, and that's where that additional cost drove that excavating up.
yeah.
So-
I mean, it's quite a bit of a cost.
Oh, it's a lot, yes. Yep.
I guess my overall question is this is just my overall thoughts and questions, but we just finished a conversation about long-range facility planning, and part of it's grounds and stuff, and I'm sure you know where I'm going with this, but I'm not super confident that the bus garage will always be in that location as we work together. Maybe it will, I don't know, but is that part of our conversation that we're having this year? I mean, because that would be one of my concerns, right? We put $350,000 into a bus garage parking lot location, and then we're in a year from now, after we do kind of some of this planning, we're not totally positive, and I just don't know, and I want to ask that.
Yeah, I guess I would never say never. I would say at least at this point, the benefits of where it's located is that it is kind of central within the district. Having been displaced over to the basement of the middle school facility, it's interesting it does take a lot longer. So part of it is just being centrally located within the district. The other piece is that that there is a huge hill there. So for building, one of the most difficult things to do is to construct a physical structure that goes, at a height differential. For any of the things that we've talked about, either if you were to modify the intermediate school and build on, which will be our middle school, or a facilities garage, none of that, or an athletic field, none of that has ever been targeted at that area. But I wouldn't say never, never, but the other place would be if it got moved, we don't really have land at our current Elm Street. We wouldn't want to take away green space at the future middle school, and at the high school, we have some, people are already asking us to develop that green space. So I guess I would say it's less likely that it be moved, but again, I could be surprised.
One comment on that, it's on a corner, it's on an intersection, so to build any large type school facility, you're going to have setbacks and everything. You really can't increase the square footage of a building there very much. You can some, but I don't think enough for an academic building, if you will. So my thinking, this is a long-term building. This is a long-term solution. So.
And then I had a question about. I have learned so much since being on the board about like construction projects and all this stuff. So I understand everything's coming. You guys have taught me that for sure. Everything's coming. It's saving us money, like a lot of money. So now is just this really good opportunity. And so I appreciate the question coming to us now, at least for us to consider. And so again, thinking about how to pay for things. So it's Fund 46 that we have where we have been setting money aside. How much money do we have in there right now? I was actually looking, and is it a little over $1 million, or is
correct?
Looking at okay.
But we began the year with $1 million. We make a contribution, so it's about 1.1. But we also have the bills that are coming for some of the move and some of the things that you've already approved. I think right now a safe figure to kind of look at is that, according to an update from Sue, we are estimating that we have about $750,000 that is available and not been encumbered in any way.
Post-move.
But yet, again, still in the process of trying to, all those bills and all those things are still coming in through June 30th.
And that 340-some thousand, none of that would come out of referendum?
Correct.
That's in addition to it.
Yeah, so, and that is a really clear, so the benefit is it's co-located with referendum work, but this project, our referendum question was specific to facility, and we named the schools, so we can't use referendum dollars.
And the Fund 46, this was listed, of all that documentation that we had, long-range planning and everything that was in there, what we're going to do, this parking lot was listed for when we were putting money away, so it was on the list of things we could use Fund 46 for. Okay. So.
And it doesn't mean that you could not use fund balance. So you use fund balance for a one-time cost, only because we have a Fund 46, which is a trust fund that can only go to capital improvements. It is the first place we would recommend. Mm-hmm. You could also go to fund balance. Again, we're still in the throes of a pre-audit, and I can't necessarily tell you exactly where we are, but I can tell you our Fund 46 where we are.
So it's pretty safe to estimate that this will be about half of the Fund 46 balance to cover this project?
Potentially, yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And is there have we explored any other options for what we can do? I'm especially concerned with safety, and I understand like the snow removal. I mean, we have 6-month-long winters here. I definitely understand that. Are there any other options that we've explored to kind of narrow down the cost, or is this kind of it?
Well, to me, the right way is to do the whole project. And, if you're asking me for option B, I guess you could do half of the parking lot, So, we're looking at, about 40,000 square feet up there, so we'd have, half, about 20,000. So if you take the southern part of the building where the 3 garage doors are that they drive the buses in for servicing and all that, and if you draw a line in front of that, go straight east towards Borner, so from that corner of the gravel to there is about 200 feet, and then from the corner, and then it'd be a depth of about 85 feet, replacing part of the apron. That would be about half of that area.
And
So-
some of the, if it was something, to think in stages, we did have conversations with Tim as well. Obviously, trying to do all of it for a generation is probably what we propose. The fallback, though, is we do have staff that have fallen. They do park in that area, but also Tim and Aaron are working on buses. They're the mechanics. Those doors are open while they're working, specifically in the summer. So probably, if you couldn't do the whole project, that would be the next best thing, because it would minimize the amount of dust going in while they're working on buses, while they're working on the equipment, and also potentially decreasing some of the falls for our staff just as they park and get into the garage.
So that's where the buses get serviced, is on the southern end of that building,
Correct.
where Rick was kind of pointing to?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, towards St. Christ Street.
Okay.
And how much, this you probably haven't planned, so you can just say, I can't answer that, Tanya, but is there, I'm guessing it's not like we're doing half the parking lot, it's half the cost we're saving. Do you have any idea how much of a difference it would be between the two projects?
Well, you still,
Yeah.
I mean, that front part, you're still gonna have to do the full excavation, get down, get that base and everything in there. The square footage, the asphalt, that you can pretty much say that's gonna be half.
That's the difference,
Because that square footage of asphalt from Monarch we got was the same for the other projects per square foot for asphalt. This one here where we get the cost is the extra excavating, because we don't have the base there, so we gotta dig that out. So, but you still have to grade that gravel. If you leave that gravel in the other half, you still have to grade that to get the water to run that way. So you can't say it's going to cost half of that. You're still going to have a cost there. So it probably 120,000. Somewhere there. Your design fees. The asphalt you could pretty much cut in half. The design fees, seating, and that's probably going to be the same whether you do the full-blown project or a part project.
Right.
So
And if we were to do it in another time down the road, we're going to be paying those fees again later.
you'll be paying more per square foot. Just we know what's all happening with the oil and gas. It's never a stable market. So.
Mike, how hard would it be to get an estimate on that and have us come back as a board, as a special board meeting in July before the deadline?
I can call them tomorrow and get them going on it. I don't know how fast they can turn it around. I know part of it is they're trying to get they got the projects lining up, they got the excavators, they're scheduling and all this. Unless here's another option if you want to say, well, we're fine up to a dollar amount and we'll do as much as we can for that dollar amount. So if you say, 180, 200,000, and we go and say, hey guys, we can do this much work, might speed the process up of getting it scheduled. But if you want to do half of that and get a bid, we can sure ask them right away tomorrow.
Does anybody, Helen, do you have any thoughts on this one?
Yeah, I actually have a question. I don't know if this is going to be for you or Tim. So you talked about throwing codes and and you can't run the bus if it has a code, right?
Oh, an error code on the bus?
Yeah, you can't run the
Yeah,
bus
I
if it
think,
has an
I'm
error
not
code, right?
the mechanic part of that, but I think the error codes will detune the bus where you don't have power, you can't drive them. on some of the codes if they get dirty or whatever.
So my question is just how often does that happen? Because that's a big deal. So how often does it happen
I don't
because
know.
of this, if you know? I don't know if I can ask both of you or.
It get worse all the time with more electronics on the buses.
Sure.
Probably 8 to 10 times this past year, we've had buses
Okay.
shut down
Yep.
because of stuff like that.
Any other questions or thoughts on this?
I mean,
I can keep going.
I guess I get it because I have a mechanic husband, so
Yeah.
like working in sand and breaking that stuff,
Yeah.
that's not good for, especially now that all the buses they're not as user-friendly as they used to be, and they're more, computer-based. That's gonna be a challenge. And the price is, I'm sure, only gonna go up. So we want the buses and the bus drivers. They're amazing, all of them, and we want them to have what they need, so, yeah.
So can I jump in with a couple comments here? Understood, this is something that is on the plan, and we want to address it somehow. It's such a big chunk of money for our Fund 46, and we just got done kind of talking about, where we're at with our fund balance, where we're at with Fund 46. I think we need to, I would like to see after this move and kind of like where our Fund 46 sits. You kind of have 750, that sounds about right post-move, but what about the fund balance? Rick, how are we going to pay for this? And if there's a cheaper option to get at least some of the critical path stuff taken care of so the bus drivers are safe and the buses themselves aren't getting full of dirt and soot, that's, I think, at least worth looking at. And if the board is willing, we could try to schedule a meeting in another week or two and try to get something. I know that's not everybody's favorite thing to do, but if it's important enough because of the timing of it, we could look at that.
Are you asking for like a different bid from a different company?
No,
or the same company
no.
and just-
I think it's just, if it's possible, Mike, a revised bid that is kind of like, what is the other, bare minimum that we could do on that south side? What does that look like?
You're looking for another option.
Yeah, I know you don't want to do another option B, but I'm just trying to get it to a point where, like, what's a compromise?
Okay.
314 is a pretty steep number, and I know we got a track that needs to be repaved or resealed or regutted and everything.
Yep.
And that's going to have to come somewhere too.
Yep.
So we have to kind of figure out big picture wise, and if there's any other, I don't remember talking about this one, and I know it's always been on the list.
We haven't talked about it for probably 5-6 years.
So when we kind of looked at back last year when we had our healthy fund balance and our healthy Fund 46, and we started looking at how much it's going to cost to do the move, what else is there? I remember the talk about the track field. I don't remember the talk about this. I'd be interested to know if there's other kind of hidden things that we're just not thinking of that we're going to have to maybe address with fund balance dollars or Fund 46 dollars.
Well-
So we have a bigger picture of that.
And part of it, did we not cut back on the STEM remodel of the school because we did not know how much money we'd have available or what exactly they would need? And if we expand STEM to what they need to have, that needs to come out of this, and then you have to move. So we might need that shop area, so if we spend half of that now, and we realize in 6 months.
It's a lot to put together in a short amount of time, I realize that.
It just seems like a lot that we want to get out of.
But maybe if we had a ballpark on the big ticket items and how much they cost and what that's going to drain out of our fund balance, our Fund 46, is there an alternate bid that gets the bus garage at least somewhere better than it is now?
I can definitely ask him.
I think that would be something the board might entertain.
And I think we need to have Pat available for this also.
I did talk to him about this one too, and he gave me permission to say it. He's not comfortable with it. He would like to see something on the lines of an alternative option as well, if there's something we can meet in the middle on. So I think this is right where he was going to go with it anyways.
Sorry, the other question I would have is how much do we pay to upkeep it every year? Like how much, like you don't have that
I don't
information
have that-
now?
I don't have
But
that
like maybe that's
offhand.
something, that, like when you come back with this to
Yeah.
say like, because we're talking about this big number, but
What
if
was
it
this, what?
costs, like the upkeep to actually like
Add gravel.
grade it, all that sort of stuff, that would be a good number to know, because if that's high in itself, then we could be saving money in the long run. So.
What's the time frame for when the excavators and all of that group need to know if they're going to be doing this project?
We're in parking lots right now.
I know, yeah.
They started at Malone, digging up footings and stuff. I'm not sure on the milling, when that's kind of the next start, and then we have some tiling to do. Look for milling to start next week, so.
So we're right at that timeline, pretty much.
So, yeah, we'll make a phone call right away tomorrow, and
So
You know.
if, just to kind of clarify, what I'm hearing is we should, one, the price tag right now at this point in time is a concern. And what would be an option for us is if we can work with Market & Johnson,
Okay.
get a revised bid for a portion. If it was something that was more palatable, you would be willing to schedule as soon as possible, at least another one-item board meeting to discuss it.
That's where I'm going with it. If everybody else would be on board with that, I think we could try to. And then we'll
I
just.
think that's great. My only other thought, and I think somebody else brought it up, which is like, what are those other costs that are going to be butting up against this for Fund 46
Yep.
dollars?
Yeah.
Because, I mean, to be fair, it is close to half of the fund that we've spent years saving, and it's important, and I know we need to do something, but also like what else was planned to come out of that within the next handful of years?
Yeah.
I think is important for me as well. And then I just wanted to acknowledge that it was really, we could not get a meeting together.
Yeah, we're gonna have to figure out something.
We
If
might not have the whole group there.
If we have a quorum, we should probably just get it on the calendar and do it, and we'll do the best we can.
Okay.
Is the option to possibly do a Zoom available? for
We
something
can
along that
certainly entertain that, absolutely. Just remember, a quorum of three has to pass 3-0. If it's not a two,
Right.
So you still need 3 votes to pass an item.
Well, with one agenda item, I don't foresee it being, a 2-hour meeting. So-
Right.
So I would hope that we could all come up with at least, half hour, 45 minutes to get this
Yeah.
figured out.
Okay,
All right,
Thanks, Mike.
yep,
Thank
no
you.
problem.
appreciate it, Mike.
All right, where am I? I'm gonna
You
find my
are,
stuff.
we are
We're gonna
doing
move
the-
on, item E, consider athletic code updates for the 23-24 school year.
Good evening, Board.
Time out.
Time out.
Oh, that's right.
What happened?
We have to do a
You have to make some motion,
make
some motion.
either to
Oh.
table or not approve.
Well, we don't have to make a motion to table it. We're tabling it, we don't have to make a motion to do that.
Can we make a motion to make everybody feel better?
So if you table it, you have to have a specified date though, right? So you could
Yeah.
vote on the current motion of the entire thing and then decline it, we'll come back and set up.
If nobody makes a motion, we don't have to do anything, and I,
That would be the other way.
Just let it lie.
unless you know the book of Robert's rules, I guess, but
We did for tabling, but if no one makes a motion. Yeah. It's
well,
the
we're not
intent.
gonna make a motion to and then
Yeah.
vote it down.
Yeah, okay. It's really the collective, as long as you're understanding, right, that it was entertained, and we're being directed to get more information, and we'll schedule, as soon as we can, a meeting once that information's available. Thank you.
If I'm wrong, I'm wrong. Sorry.
We'll get, go ahead, Andrew.
Okay, I'm bringing back the activities code adjustments that we talked about last meeting. Very few adjustments based on the feedback that you provided under the honesty clause. We added the word offending in place of just student, saying offending student, so it was clearer on what student we're talking about. So if an offending student informs the activity director of a code violation, then that offending student would essentially have a lesser penalty if it's not already known. So that change was made both to the athletics and performance activities and clubs. And the other change that was made is minor, is under performance activities and clubs. It says suspended 1 week. I took out the one event so that there was more of an incentive for students to come to me in the event there was an issue. No other changes were made. Everything else is as you saw it last month.
Tanya?
I don't have questions. I read it, I saw the changes. I was most concerned about the equity between the activities and performing arts stuff with sports, and I like that change of the 1 week. Yeah, so.
Vicki?
Yep, no, I agree with Tanya. You fixed the edit or whatever, the wording, and made the other change, so, yep, looks good.
Yeah, I don't have any questions.
Me neither. Thanks, Andrew.
Okay.
Wish you would have been here first, probably, right?
Well,
You would have to stay here anyways.
I'm here anyways. So with your approval, then this would be going to the activities code that will go live in registration for activities later this summer.
All right, anybody want to make a motion?
I move to approve athletic code updates for 2023-2024 school year.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? And that carries on to item F, consider selling assets worth over $5,000.
This is a interesting thing instead of bake sales. But you have a policy, and by statute, anything that's considered capital assets that's greater than $5,000, the school board must authorize the district to be able to sell that. In addition, we have some surplus items, and they are less than $5,000, but we wanted to kind of be open so that everybody understood what's happening. All of these tools and equipment are things that are currently in our career and tech ed area. Mr. Figge and we have 2 outstanding career and tech ed teachers have been looking at both how they're currently instructing and some equipment that is taking up floor space that really is underutilized. And the first one is a wide belt sander, and we have a planer that now does kind of similar things that we got through grants. That is a high ticket item. The condition is very good. We have estimated worth, and it is $13,000. So by your policy, it is above the $5,000. We would need to be able to have you sanction that. We listed some other things on there, from a plasma cutter, scroll saw. Again, these are incidental estimated worth. They fall below it, but it would be about $14,600. We have different ways that we can do this, mechanisms that Sue Gertis, our finance coordinator, there are auction sites and surplus government websites that you can post it. It's mainly to make sure that anybody in the community or anybody that wants to bid on it has an opportunity to do so. So that is part of it. In addition, one of the things that we have found is that we have some different types of welders, and all of them are high level, and we are looking to replace them with things that are more like a Swiss Army knife, so that they can do all types of the welds, but allow us to, and Josh, you could probably articulate why the Swiss Army knife was better than the TIG welders, the stick welders, and the,
Do you get,
Been by the tech guy, the metals classroom and the engines classroom, we run two different types of classes out of the same space. We have a number of different welding bays. And you can kind of see from the types of welders that are there, we have stick welders, TIG welders, and MIG welders. They're all extremely good, except for you can see some of them are extremely old. They're still functional, but they no longer make the parts for those. So when it comes time to replace parts, they start to lose their functionality. But because we have three different types of welders, and then you can see that there are multiples of each one, they take up a lot of space. In a classroom that really doesn't have a lot of space to give, especially with kids bringing in engines projects, and then multiple classes running throughout the day. You can't take a riding lawnmower home and bring it back the next day. So what our teachers advocate for is getting rid of the three different types of welders, even though they're extremely high end. There's a new type of welder that's out that most of the tech schools around here are advocating for teaching tools. It allows the students to do all three different types of welds on one machine, thus saving a lot of space. And then doing kind of a redesign of that classroom space, just in terms of the space, to have more safety, more supervision for the teachers, and more workspace for some of the other projects that are now coming into play for our students. And then our welding bays would simply have those single welders. Part of the switchover would be that we wouldn't want to make that switch if we can't actually sell these welders, because we don't need more welders, and we would like to use the proceeds, hopefully if we can sell these, then to fund getting those new welders. So ideally and hypothetically, it's a zero cost to the district move, as long as we can sell and then purchase the new welders and proposed blanks, spec welders.
Vicki, you have any comments, questions?
Yay, welders for sale. No, I think that's a great idea, actually, if you're not using the equipment regularly and you can consolidate it down to one, that's definitely a better way to go and save space, and don't worry about having to fix these then.
Helen?
Just to clarify, all the money that's raised from here will go back to the other welders, right? Or what that class needs?
Yeah, so yes, so it would go all back to tech.
Perfect.
Proposed cost of those new welders, I think, was just under $50,000. So you can kind of see 14.6 plus the 25.
Yeah.
We would ideally have more money coming in than we would spend on those welders, but then that would all go back to the tech ed equipment.
Fantastic. Tanya?
is there any legal requirements with selling this kind of item because it was purchased with taxpayer dollars? Is there anything that we have to do differently when we sell things?
This process.
Just this
Yep,
process, just
yep,
bringing it
so
here and approving?
Yep, you have
Okay.
to declare that it's surplus and that anything over 5,000 is identified.
Has to go to the annual meeting for approval.
I have not been able to sell things at my school, so that's why I'm asking. Perfect, I think it's great. I do like that it's going back into the tech ed budget too. That's a good question.
All right, thanks, Josh. We can take a motion here.
I move to approve selling assets identified as surplus as well as specific items worth over $5,000.
I'll second.
We have Helen's first motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Sure.
Opposed?
Oh, it passed. Yeah.
That passes, all right, congratulations. We're moving on to item G, consider first reading of Neola policies.
Yes, so.
Updated policies.
Updated policies, yes. So we had, as you know, there's some that were passed in consent earlier. Those are more where nothing substantive has changed. You all had these in the folders. We are 6 options that have some additional things that are a little bit more substantive, and this is the first reading. The one that I just wanted to point out, it's the patriotic
Observances.
Yeah, thank you. Boy, I lost that one. Anyway, the reason that it's new is because there has been times where we do moments of silence. And moments of silence have often been in and attached to a policy about religious observation but we are not necessarily religious in that aspect. And so all Neola has done is to allow school districts to break it apart, and you still have your old policy, but it just allows the opportunity to have, if the district so chooses, to have a moment of silence. Otherwise, the other policies are ones that we do have. They currently exist, so I was just trying to point out one that is new, and that we do have some things that have been changed, and it's really about protocol, and it runs the gamut from attendance, the way that medication is housed within the district, who has to be trained, how we administer it, as well as whether or not parents are signing off on that. And then we also have a new state law about promotion, placement, and retention. This is something that gets updated. It looks worse than it is, but as you know, you can look at all of these policies. Anything that's in color identifies for you what is different. And then there's another update with regards to nursing about control of causal contact and communicable diseases. So if there's any specific questions, we can pull them up and display them. Also, the administrative team is here and would be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Who wants to take policies? Who's interested in, who has questions here? Helen, you have any questions?
There's no, not so far.
I most definitely do.
God dang it. That's why I looked down here first.
You guys
I looked
already
over
knew
this
I
way
did.
first on purpose.
I knew she was going
So, it's not big questions.
All right.
Okay, attendance. So that first one. There is a line in there, and I don't have it pulled up, someplace I have it pulled up, but that says that students can be suspended for not attending school, and I have a lot of conflict with that. So we want kids to go to school, and we're punishing them by not letting them go to school, and that's put in our policy, and I just don't agree with it. Also, sometimes attendance is related to parents like me and not the kids, and punishing the kids, I think, is not appropriate. So that was my question with attendance.
Was there a question or is it?
That is my question. Can we take that out?
Okay.
Yeah. Can you show, do you know where
Oh,
it's on
gosh.
screen?
Yeah, I will pull it up and look.
And principals is, do you know that,
I hope I read that right, because I just had a big conversation about it.
I think it's in policy for you to do a control F, control find, and then just search suspension faster. I know in high school we don't suspend students.
Right, why would you?
right.
I'm trying to get them.
Oh, that's just the definition of it, sorry.
See if I can find it.
There we go.
I can't, this one, unfortunately for me.
So it's, I've highlighted it, it's saying that the board authorizes but does not encourage us to suspend students.
But I don't authorize it either.
Oh,
Yeah.
I mean, why would we suspend
Sure.
for that? I'm saying, can we take that out? That's
Oh,
not,
sure.
to me, suspendable.
yep. Do you want to just take out that whole part? We don't do it, just so you know, but we'd be happy to, if you want to just strike that whole paragraph.
We might hire a rogue principal someday that might, and I don't think that we
Yeah.
should allow it.
All right.
I
Done.
could be the only one, but
All right.
that was
All
my
right.
first question.
And we support it. There's no other, by taking it out, does that clarify it for you? Are you good?
I'm good with it. That was
Okay.
my only,
So Maria, just, can you see on the screen, I won't edit it right now, but if you would just make note that right above definitions, under unexcused absences, we would strike the last paragraph. Thank you.
and then, now I'm totally off chart here, which one it was, but it was with the nursing and medication.
Sure.
And the administration of medication, it was like, pill bottles, all that, like I understand all that. But one that I thought I read, our nurse made a comment on carrying naloxone or Narcan.
Yep.
And I didn't see that mentioned in the policy, and I could have missed it, but I felt like that was an appropriate place to have it, that we would administer that if needed.
Yeah, we were one of the first school districts to have it. We do, and have used it. So you just want to make sure that,
I didn't see it in there, and maybe you could do the fancy search thing. Is it in there? It is?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I just wanted to make sure it was. I totally agree with it and wanted to make sure it was. Okay.
Yeah.
And then the retention one. This is, my understanding, new by state law, that we have some kind of retention for going to grades 5 and 9 or something like that?
yeah, so, and I'll have Michael come and clarify. So there was a potential. There always has been this policy. There were rumors, it has not passed in Madison yet, that there was going to be some strong emphasis on state testing around grade 3 and reading scores. And any student that was in basic would not be allowed to move or advance into 4th grade. That has, at this point, been stifled, and I think correctly so, if you look at the educational research. We do not hold back, but it is something that is how we identify through collaboration time and things like that, are students that need additional support, might be child find, might be Title I, might be our reading core. So it is something that we monitor and we don't ignore, but it isn't something that would prohibit a student from advancing a grade. Redoing a grade and getting the same instruction doesn't usually help mitigate the learning needs of a student. Do you want me to pull up that one specific?
Well, I have it pulled up.
Okay.
And it sounds to me like if kids are below basic, or not at least meeting basic, then we have basically that option.
It's a tiered system.
Right.
So you go from A to B to C to D before you actually make that. So A is if they're in the basic category.
Yeah, okay.
Then you go to B, are they showing progress towards meeting expectations in the majority of our priority standards in our core subjects, then they still get promoted. If that's still not true, then you would go to C and then finally.
Okay. Thank you. I wanted some clarification on that one, because I was thinking, wow, that's a lot of kids that could be in the basic level, and then we have subsets of kids that we wouldn't expect to make the same level of progress as other kids, and so I was concerned with that. So it sounds like in some ways it protects us a little bit in case the state makes a decision, but also it does fall back on the teacher. The only other thing that kind of hit me with this one was parent voice in there. Like, could a parent decline that? Because I don't know if I read that in there either. Like, what if we make all of those recommendations, A, B, C, D, we did the waterfall thing, we're gonna recommend this, could parents say, no, thank you?
I don't know that a parent can override that.
Okay.
I think they'd have to appeal it. I don't know that this policy directly talks about that, so I'll research that a little bit more for the second meeting.
Okay, and maybe it's putting that appeal process in there if that's the direction that we go in. I mean, as a parent, I think I would want to have a conversation with that and some decision-making there.
If there's a policy on the appeal process, I don't know if there is. I mean, that's where you could look at that too.
Yeah. Those are my only questions.
Good questions.
Thanks, guys.
Vicki, any questions on your end?
No. Nope.
Ellen? You know, I actually did read these. I don't,
Read all of them, too.
always take the time to read, but I did. So Tanya's got a better eye for things than I do, which that's why we have her.
Summer break right now.
Yeah, well, good. So, that policy that you were talking about the unexcused absences, that was already in the policy. That wasn't a change. That was just something that was in there that you want taken out?
I don't know, it was highlighted green.
It was?
Wasn't it highlighted? I don't know, I can't see that board very well, so.
But either way,
Yeah, okay.
we'll come back with it.
It's not highlighted green anymore.
I don't think it was.
Perfect.
All right.
wasn't.
So we have a motion, if anybody wants to make it on these first readings with the changes that are been proposed. So Tanya, maybe you want to go there?
Well, okay, because we're just approving the first reading,
It's just the
right?
first
Yeah.
reading, yeah.
Yep, I move to approve the first reading of updated Neola policies, 32.1.
And is it inferred that we're including
Because I think the
proposed
second
changes?
reading, we look back at the changes.
Okay.
And then, right,
Okay.
so I don't think I
Yeah,
have to
you're
list
right,
them.
you're
I was gonna say, we've got changes, so. do
So
you
those
wanna
changes,
pull
those changes
Okay.
will come back to us as a part of the second reading.
Okay.
Okay.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. Thank you. We're now on to info and discussion, and it's the update on the referendum projects.
Yeah, so again, I just want to, Margaret and Johnson has been outstanding to work with. Every Tuesday, we have 4 different project management meetings. Starts district-wide, then it goes by each building. They are also providing us, that I am forwarding to the board, information about what type of projects have been completed, what's coming forward, and then some photos. We are also working on our website so that we can start to put some of that work that's going on inside, so that the community can see it. And so I did ask Andrea Herzon, our communication specialist, to assist us with regards to just sharing with our community some things that they might not have been able to see. So Malone Elementary, a lot has changed, and you'll see that, but primarily we were working on, remember, infrastructure, mainly for students to be able to, it's a building, 1963, the plumbing, things like that that leak. Also, we wanted to make sure that we were ADA compliant. In addition, all of our, in our wing, what's in the white covered classrooms, is that we have unit ventilators. Also, we have these in our middle school facility. They are noisy, but when we did the energy upgrade in 2018, we decommissioned the unit ventilators, but we left them in place because we didn't have enough money. So now they are being removed from the classrooms, and teachers are receiving now bookshelves that kind of complement that. In addition, we start all the rough-ins with the plumbing, the 4 corners, the dishwashing, and we're starting to lay the conduit for all of the information for our fire alarms and PA systems. So if you've ever been in Malone Elementary, this is the current scene of what the bathrooms look like. It is quite interesting to see that they actually had a little cat tractor in there crushing that. We had different staff trying to work in there, and we are also managing a YMCA program. So kudos to the YMCA, their partnership, and also to Sarah for us to be able to do that. Some early work of just laying conduit that's up in the tiles. Now for the intermediate school, you'll see that there's a lot of additional fencing that has gone up, primarily just to make sure that people understand that it is a work zone. And the next week, we will start milling and tearing up the concrete. If you doesn't show up on the screen here, but we'll make sure that the photo's on the website. All of the concrete underneath the overhang has been removed. This is to make sure that, one, there will be no curb, so that students in wheelchairs can immediately access. You know that we host the gathering space. Obviously, uneven concrete or concrete that has a curb, it was time to get that done. Also, it is one area for you, just knowing that we have TeamWorks working with us on Vision 2035. It is an area that could be and was designed to hold 4 classrooms. By putting in the new concrete and that foundation, it gives you that opportunity. So also the storage area has been removed, and the concrete pouring is beginning in some of the areas, and we're looking forward to that. This is the mezzanine and the bathrooms. You can see all of the old facilities have been removed, sinks, toilets. This is the mezzanine. This one is important for people to understand, is that this is a unit or an entrance that has an air handler underneath. This is the one that's been leaking and wrecked the electrical panel on our new air handler, but also is where the water is infiltrating into our wrestling room and weight room. And so if we ever want to use that space, we needed to cut out the concrete. So all of the concrete is being removed down to a bladder and then being redone. Then also the code is different now with regards to railings and also those concrete 1969 artwork are connected with rebar that has rusted out. So I didn't get my fancy glass panels, but that is almost in place. But this is looking down underneath the overhang where there used to be a garage where we had a lot of storage. This is the library. And so as we are removing the carpet and moving the libraries, that's all being prepped for the work. Then the middle school facility, the room 100 is where the new STEM room for grades 4 and 5 will be going. That was the old fax room. All of that has been removed. We did identify that there was some asbestos in that area, so we did have, luckily, an asbestos removal company that was working at the other site. We're able to kind of remove that and do that in 2 days' time. We are working with and replacing a lot of the drywall and plumbing. Many of the bathrooms weren't large enough for students in wheelchairs or ADA compliant, and what we've done is taken 2 short or small bathrooms and combine them into one. And those will start being tiled and implemented, or rebuilding. We're still doing a lot of demolition through this week. Here's a picture of the old fax room in the lower level. This is room 100. A lot of additional space, and we're looking forward to that being built. Here's an example where it used to be 2 bathrooms, and now it'll be combined into just one larger ADA compliant. A new doorway will be added, and it's been drywalled. Here's another picture of just a unit ventilator on the right that's been removed, very similar to what's happening over at the elementary building. And so just kind of a walkthrough with regards to a lot of the projects. A lot of dust and noise. Mike's group continues to prepare all the rooms that are available as we cycle through, and his crew is working mostly at the middle school facility down on Elm Street to get all the classrooms waxed, cleaned, so that when furniture, which was removed on Monday and entered into storage, that we can get that cleaned and be prepared for some of the new furniture that'll be arriving. Any questions or feedback on or clarification on some of the referendum projects that are at hand?
Helen, or?
No, I think my daughter's working in there, so she thinks you're doing a great job.
All right, Vicki?
So that's good.
No, I absolutely love, Market and Johnson had told us that we were going to get weekly updates, we were going to get pictures, we were going to get a breakdown of what was going on, and they are delivering what they said they would. So this is great to see the progress, because, you can drive by and you can kind of see what's going on the outside, but you're not exactly sure so to be able to see pictures is awesome.
Tanya?
I just add on, I like the idea of figuring out a way to communicate this to the public, putting it on the websites, all that kind of stuff, because they're the ones who paid for this. So it's well needed, and it's exciting. It's here.
Is it too early to ask if we're on track?
Let's just say it's a tight timeline. There's no doubt about it, but we are on track. And the other thing I really appreciate about Market and Johnson is those Tuesday, they're asking each of the vendors whether or not their delivery of supplies of what they need for the next week, if they're on time and they're scheduled. And so they are very proactive and holding everybody to the tight timeline. They've been delightful to work with and very responsive to any change, question. So we're in a good spot. And the good news is that a majority of the work that needs to get done is indoors. And so weather doesn't become an issue. It's all about, as long as the staff and the supplies keep coming.
The only thing is, when we put these pictures on the website, I wonder if you can do a little explanation why, because I think that what the pictures are and why we're doing glaze. I think even though the community
Yeah,
has
can
an
you-
idea that, you know, that
I know
mezzanine.
Can you do that for?
Yeah, that mezzanine, like, I don't even know if that's what it's called.
The
Like,
mezzanine.
When you look at that, you're like, why are they doing that?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
you just told us, and that's an awesome reason, that's why we're doing that. So it'd be good if they knew that too.
Sure.
Because I've had a couple questions, I'm like, wow.
Delegate.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that, and there's a couple things that we are trying to do. Beyond pictures would be some video, and then if we had video, maybe some voiceover. And so
Perfect.
I'm hoping that, well, not hoping, we are working on that and have been meeting on it, and we should have that going by mid-July.
Awesome. All right, we're gonna move on. Recognition of visitors. Anybody care to be recognized? Please. You have to come up, say your name and what your municipality is. And if you're talking about anything on the agenda.
Taslin Magnuson, Prescott, Wisconsin. I only have one kid left. Thank God. And I wasn't suspended, nor were they, for their absences. Okay. So part of my job now in my life is Robert's Rules of Order. And
Did we get it right or not?
it's very important, not maybe in this moment in time, but I've watched countless school boards fail to have the right order and the right motion at the right time and have some issues. So what I think should have been done, and she was correct.
She's like,
Did
she tell you to come up here?
No, I looked it up because I like to be
All right, go
right.
ahead.
I mean, I like to be right. You should have had a motion on the floor to accept what he said, and then somebody would have had to have a motion to postpone indefinitely, and then it could be brought forward at a later date with an open-ended date. That's what the postpone indefinitely means.
Thank you.
Just
I
Can I
learned
ask-
something tonight.
Can I ask a question
I hope I
on
don't
that? I
get
know it's not an
disbarred.
agenda item.
I don't.
Go ahead. I don't care. We're already past.
Well, Robert's rule, are we allowed to? I guess my question is, what if nobody wanted to propose that? Because that's, if I read that, that's assuming I am proposing that. I mean, I'm saying that. So
Well,
what if I didn't want?
Technically, you would have, like, waiting for you motions and options in the course of the agenda. And so there would be one that would be like, we don't accept this, we do accept this, or we postpone indefinitely discussions, so.
And I think that's, honestly, I think we were confused on the indefinitely. We knew that if you postpone, you were supposed to specify a time.
Yeah.
We didn't know that there was an indefinite option. So if there's an indefinite option, we'll make sure that that's available to you
Well, you
in
are
the
very
future.
lucky.
Well, if I go down, I'm taking Helmer with me and I'm taking Gene Champlin with me too, the previous board presidents. Because I know they've done the same thing. So thank you for pointing that out.
Thank you.
You're awesome.
All right, let's see, I have to move on. And we're gonna just go to, we got a closed session coming up. So the board will consider a motion to convene in closed session under exemptions 1985 1A, C, and E. Do I gotta read all these?
The statutes, right? Yeah.
Just the highlighted statutes?
So some repeat, so you just have to read the,
All right, so the statutes we're going into closed session on are 1985 1A. And that's, I do have to read the rest of it because there's a lot of them here.
Yep.
Deliberating concerning a case which was the subject of any judicial or quasi-judicial trial hearing or hearing before that governmental body. It's easier to read it from this way. 1985 1C, considering promotion, compensation, and performance evaluation data of any public employee over which the governmental body has jurisdiction or exercises responsibility. And that's for two different employees. So I'm going to move on to the competitive bidding, Wisconsin statute 1985 1E, deliberating or negotiating the purchasing of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other specified public business whenever competitive or bargaining reasons require closed session. Number 5 is 1985 1E. Did we already do that one?
Yep, we did. There's 3 of us.
Okay.
You were done.
And so that's good. All right. So we will consider a motion to convene a closed session under those exemptions.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go
Time.
into closed session at, let's just say, 8:10. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? All right, we're going into closed session.
Thank you.
Great.